Good morning, everyone. I am Tabitha Hassell. Welcome to Tabs on Tap. Can't believe it today. Episode 37. I actually know what day it is today. It is a wonderful Wednesday morning. And how do I know it's Wednesday morning? Because we have Colonel Joe Adams joining us this morning at 8 a.m. And I already know you're going to ask. We've had some sound issues, some technical issues. I believe we have worked all of these things out. We have tested, and tested. All of our testing has been fine and wonderful. So I expect some great things today. It'll be so wonderful to hear from Colonel Joe Adams, who I saw on Saturday. So we're going to talk about that amazing, successful event that took place this Saturday. An amazing time to go out and honor our veterans, honor our first responders, and it'll be really fantastic to hear from Colonel Joe Adams today. If you want to reach out to Colonel Joe Adams, you can see the ticker, of course, scrolling across the screen, but you can also do that at patriots at thewashingtonguard.com. And I'm telling you, we need the Washington Guard now more than ever before. Good morning, JC, on the comment line. After yesterday's debate, man, we're going to have to go into that debate. 3 against 1. We all know that. That's pretty obvious, even to the liberals. Even they know it was 3 against 1. But didn't we expect that with ABC? Because again, Trump has an active lawsuit against ABC. The owner of ABC, the CEO of ABC, they are really good friends with Kamala Harris, very good friends with her. And so, did we really expect it to go any other way? Now, if Harris really wanted to put on a good debate, she would have agreed to go and do the Fox debate, as Biden had actually done. And that would have happened on September 4th. Now, there's rumor that there's going to be a second debate. I don't know. I don't know about that. Good morning, Allison, Ryan, Eddie, Dottie, Linda, and Sherry. I'm sure you guys all watched the debate last night. I know I did. If you guys were on my Facebook page, you probably saw me commenting to literally everything because it was such a farce. It was such a farce. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about 9/11 because, who could forget that horrific day in history? We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to hear a little bit about from Candace Owens and what she has to say about 9/11. And we're going to get into a little bit of the conspiracy talk. We're going to talk some facts. I'm going to show a little bit of video of that because I'll tell you, it is a day I think all of us will remember. I think we all know where we were that day and what we were doing at that exact same moment. I know I do. I know I'll never forget. For us in our lives, we haven't had a lot of really significant things that have happened in our country, like some of our grandparents did, who lived through the Great Depression and who lived through some of them, World War I, World War II, in all of these. It's a memorable time, I think, for so many of us. Allison, it looked like Trump was debating three people. He was debating three people. He had two people fact checking him and a moderator giving Kamala Harris some talking points. I mean, it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Jay said, I admit she did better than I thought she would, but no word salad. Doesn't mean she said anything either. We're going to talk about that too, because probably you guys also may think that she may have had a little earpiece in. Do you think that maybe those earrings? We're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you the photos of those earrings. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? Because Democrats are notorious for wearing earpieces, notorious for it. And I will never believe that they didn't give her those questions ahead of time. And I'm not just saying that because she did so well, and she did do well. I thought she did well. And let's see here. Linda watched about 20 watched with about 20 Patriots. Yeah, that would have been fun to watch it with a group of people. Ryan, my TV kept muting when Harris spoke, probably from her chalkboard voice. It's crazy, but we're definitely going to get into that. I want to talk about briefly at some point during the show today about the tetanus shot. Is it possible that they could be vaccinating you? You may have been like me and held out and didn't receive a COVID vaccine, but maybe they're just hiding at other things. Remember back during COVID times, if any of you ever watched me on the show called War on COVID, one of the things we talked about so often on that show is they want every single person in the world to get the shot, to get the COVID vaccine, every single person. And they were so upset when anyone refused to get it. It wasn't like, oh, well, we got the most of them. Nope. They wanted every single person to get it. I really do think they're hiding it in other things. I'm going to show you a little bit of a video about that. Are they giving you the COVID vaccine in other things? Maybe the tetanus shot. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk a little bit about voting. You know what we're going to talk a lot about is, of course, the debate today. Because how can we not talk about the debate and get into all of the lies that were told? I mean, what a day! Today I'm just thinking, like, where are we going? I think about that all too often. Seeing that debate, I really expected Trump to just mop the floor with Harris, and it did not happen. It didn't happen. And we'll get into that a little bit more. I want to talk about 9/11 first. Jay, adverse reactions to the jab are crazy and plentiful. Oh yeah, turbo cancers. Whoever heard of turbo cancers before the COVID vaccine? Allison, she never answered if she would have term limits on abortion. No, she didn't answer, and they didn't make her answer. They would have, if that had been Trump and it would have been a pointed question towards him, like so many other questions were, they would have forced him to answer. They would not have ever dropped it. And they didn't do that with her because you know why? Because we know exactly what she supports. We know what she supports. The problem is that's on, at the end of the day, with the debate, does it really change anyone's mind on either candidate? I don't think so. But we're going to get into that. A lot of things we're going to get into today. And most importantly, today, one of the things we're really going to get into is as much as I hate to do it and I hate to talk about it, yesterday we touched base on 20,000 Haitians. Remember that? We talked about that yesterday. If you were here with me yesterday, 20,000 Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, a small Ohio town, small town, 20,000 Haitians there. And they're in Missouri too. Don't think they're not, they're not recent immigrants, but there is a town in Missouri called Little Haiti for a reason. And because the Haitians have been there for a long time. And my son's father grew up in that area down in Charleston, Missouri. And he used to tell me stories about when they were kids and young teens and they would go to Little Haiti and they would see them doing rituals and voodoo and different things and the killing of animals. So it's not unusual. This has been going on for a really long time. But what's happening right now in Springfield, Ohio, this is new because these are 20,000 Haitians that just came into Springfield, Ohio. They're recent, they're new. They're illegal. I mean, we're going to talk about it. We've got some videos to show you about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the replacement theory. Not a lot, but we'll touch base on it because we all know that these illegals are here to replace who? The Black community. That's why they're here. That's where they're moving into. Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang, they're not in Ladue, they're not in Frontenac, they're not wherever you live in an upscale neighborhood. Nope, they're taking over the low income areas that are predominantly Black communities. And let's say they're not here in the St. Louis area doing this yet, but when they do, somewhere you might see them would be North St. Louis, or they'll be taking over some of the hotels there and some of the apartment buildings. Why? Because they can get away with it, because who's going to do anything about it? And that would be no one, just like the government has done nothing about the other violent gangs that are here in our country. So we have no choice but to talk today about what's taking place with these immigrants in our country. And I touched on it yesterday. Things are very different in some of these other countries. They do things very differently than what we do here. And it's about assimilation. And it's very difficult for these people to come here and assimilate to our cultures. So we're going to get into that. But first, I really want to talk about 9/11. It's so difficult to talk about. I'm going to show a little bit of a video. We're going to hear what Candace Owens has to say. It's a day I will always remember. I think about it. It's also a time when I kind of woke up. There was a time, and I've told this story before, but there was a time when I was one of those people who I watched CNN 24/7. I did. I did not want any guns in my home. I wouldn't allow a gun in my home. And my son's father and I used to fight about it constantly because he, of course, grew up shooting guns. He, was a county prosecutor down there in Charleston near Little Hayti, as a matter of fact. And I just didn't want guns around the house. I seriously, I would never have called myself a super liberal by any means, but I hadn't woken up yet. Like, we've all probably, some of you were born woke, some of us had to come to terms with it. And that happened to me with 9/11. I started waking up and thinking, wow, I see now that the government lies to us. I understand now that what we see on channels like CNN, it's all fake. So 911, 9/11, 2001 holds, a couple of different places for me. One, obviously somber, terrible to think about all of the lives lost. Over 3,000 Americans' lives lost on that day. And then, of course, the lies that followed and how much my life has changed since then, since waking up, since understanding exactly what took place. So we're going to get into that. I have to be careful with 9/11 because it's very easy for me to go down the rabbit hole and to start talking about everything that I know, everything I've uncovered since then, some of the people that I've talked to, and at the same time, also trying to honor those lives that were lost. And so it's a very delicate balance to do that. But I remember where I was, 8:46 a.m. I'm sure all of you remember exactly where you were on 9/11. 8:46 a.m. I had to be at work that day by 9 a.m. And I'll never forget, I was pulling into work when the first plane hit. I was almost getting ready to pull into the garage. And I heard it on the news because I listened to talk radio then, just like, maybe I would now. And I remember hearing the reports about, gosh, an airplane flying into World Trade Center. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, at the time there was so much speculation listening to the news report because some people were saying, oh, well, this has happened before. There, believe it or not, a plane had flown into the World Trade Center before that, allegedly. And that's what they were talking about. They're like, is it a small commuter plane? Is it a big airplane? At that time, no one really knew. And I remember sitting in my car listening to the news reports, and I could hear the somber tone in the newscasters' voices, and they didn't want to say anything or confirm anything until I'm sure they were given the go ahead to do that. And so I ended up being late for work because I was sitting there listening to the newscast. I finally went in, and no one in the building had really heard about it or were talking about it. They were all going about, their day. And I remember coming in and saying, gosh, we got to turn the TV on. And then we all just kind of sat there and watched the coverage on the television. And then while we're watching, of course, the coverage on the television, we see the second, plane hit the South Tower. It was absolutely a horrific day. And Mary, this country has forgotten the lessons of 9/11. It began with pulling out of Afghanistan. Not nearly enough is brought up in schools. Well, history is rewritten. There will be a time for our grandchildren, great grandchildren, where history will be rewritten and they'll never know the truth because, of course, with the Harris Walls regime, they're going to make sure they close down every avenue for truth. Jay says, my wife woke me up saying something was happening in New York. I was watching live when the second plane hit. Me too, Jay. And I'll tell you, again, 3,000 people on the ground. Plus, of course, we have a couple hundred people that were in the planes. And we're going to kind of do two things here. First of all, I'm going to show you a video. This is not a new video. It was a new video. Good morning, Annette. That to me, I hadn't seen it. I believe it was a Japanese tourist that took this video. And it does, in my opinion, give you a little bit of a different angle. Many of you have probably already seen this video. I had not. And I want to play this for you. It's 2 minutes long. So we're going to take a look at this here as we all remember the tragedy that day.
At the beginning of its final destruction, World Trade Center 2 tips or twists to the east, but turns to dust before hitting the ground. The tipping top falsifies the claims by NIST that it was an inevitable collapse.
If the leaning top had fallen as a rigid block, it would have landed on World Trade Center 4. When we look, it is not there. Not only is it not there, but neither is the main body of World Trade Center 4 itself.
That was a big aha moment for me about the tipping top. It looks like it stops tipping, and it looks like it goes straight down. Well, if you look at angular momentum, and you're going to obey the laws of physics. It does. But what it does is prove that the building is no longer a rigid body. You know, the whole thing, tipping, has angular momentum, but if suddenly all of that top portion turns into little itty-bitty specks of dust, each one can keep rotating. So the whole thing doesn't continue rotating as a rigid body, but each of the little specks rotates. And that way it conserves angular momentum and doesn't violate the laws of physics. So that's a way of proving that the top turned to dust.
In this video, we can see that some of the core columns survive the rest of the building being peeled away from it like a banana, but then these core columns themselves turn to dust before our eyes.
What a horrific day that was. It's so hard to watch that video. Dottie says, clean drop. Good morning, Cindy Giordano. And Jay says, if it happened today, a portion of our population would applaud the attackers. Probably. They probably would. You know, I would be the first person to say I don't like the regime that has been controlling our country for quite some time now. But I love our country. I love our American citizens, our fellow Americans, even the ones that don't agree with us. And I would never want to see any harm come to our country or even those that don't agree with us. And it's really a shame that people would think that. Now, I am a person who does believe, and I don't care if you want to call me a conspiracy theorist or not. Some of what I know is based in fact. Some of it's based on just my own personal thoughts. Of course, I don't have a degree in engineering, but my own personal thoughts based on what I see. I do believe, and Genevieve, you took the words right out of my mouth, controlled demolition. I do think it was a controlled demolition. And, and I actually thought it was a controlled demolition even before I woke up and realized what was really going on. Now, back then, I used to have a little bit of a different theory than I do now. Now I'm kind of 50-50 on this. What I used to think before I woke up and realized how much our government lies to us, back then, I did think it was a controlled demolition, but I thought they did it because when you think about the logistics of things, if that building, if either of those towers had tipped to the side, it would have taken out, half of New York City, and many more thousands of lives, of course, would have been lost. New York City would have been absolutely destroyed if those buildings tipped over and fell into other buildings, fell into the streets, and so on. And I always felt like while World Trade Center North and South was on fire, that all of these people we saw going up into their different fire teams, different experts that we saw going in there, bomb technicians, etc., that they went in and they placed these explosives in the building, or maybe these interior explosives had already been placed there as a safety precaution. And I thought they intentionally imploded the building to make sure that the building went straight down versus over to each side. Now since then, I've seen a lot of videos that and I've heard a lot of stories that there was a lot of other things that went on. Gold in the bottom of the building that allegedly went missing. We know the owner, at that time, he had just bought the World Trade Center buildings, 2 months before this took place, and that he would go up to World Trade Center and, up to the restaurant at the top, and he would have, I think it was breakfast or lunch every day, but that day he didn't do that. And then there's reports, and Candace Owens is going to talk about this a little bit, that the Israelis were warned ahead of time. I think it was maybe 2 weeks ahead of time. We'll listen to what Candace has to say about that. And how did they know ahead of time? If this wasn't pre-planned, how did they know ahead of time? And there's a lot to get into with all of that. Jay says, I don't buy into the conspiracy theory. I believe 90% are simply people trying to justify what happened because the simple truth is too simple. And Jay, there's a lot of people who believe like you do. And so did I in the very beginning. But I will tell you what, and yes, Annette, the hardest part for me watching were the people that jumped out of the windows. It was so heartbreaking. I remember sitting there watching it live. these people jumping to their deaths out of the window. It was terrible, horrific to watch that. One of the things that has kind of stuck with me over, between then and now was watching also the people who had escaped and the building and were running through the streets, or people who were already on the streets. And, they have these big shards of glass coming down at them. They're covered in dust or asbestos, whatever it was that was in that building. And, many of those people, by the way, have passed away from different types of cancers that were allegedly caused by all of that dust they breathed in and inhaled. And there was one, and I wish I would have had it for you guys today, a picture of an African American woman who was just completely coated in that dust. And she ended up having cancer and passing away. And she absolutely fought till the end and said it was because of what happened on 9/11. And so many of the other, of course, firefighters and police officers ended up with breathing problems and other serious health conditions because of what took place that day, and breathing in all of those different fibers and dust particles and everything else that came in. But I'm going to tell you something that I know personally. I know this personally because I know two people who were there that day. Technically, I know three, but I know two of their stories pretty well. Well, a friend of mine, Jason Jensen, and he works for Morgan Stanley. He was there that day. He's from this area. He just happened to be there that day for a meeting, and I've talked to him about it a number of times, and he's told the harrowing story. As a matter of fact, he called into one of the old shows, and I was on and talked to us about it. That here he was at Morgan Stanley, one of those top floors. So many of the people he knew and worked with passed away, and they were trying to tell people that day, don't go down the stairs, don't leave, stay where you are, don't go anywhere. You're safer if you just stay put. They're going to come and rescue us, or whatever the story was. And he almost stayed put, and then he changed. He thought at the last minute, I think it was divine intervention that something told him, no, I have to leave here now. And he made his way down the stairs with so many other people, and he survived. He just barely got through when the tower collapsed. He was so lucky to live. But let's flip that around a little bit. I also know a guy who, and I've talked about this story before, who I met much later in time, he worked for the Pentagon. He worked directly he was on the J8 team. He worked directly for Mike Mullen, who at the time was a Joint Chief of Staffs. And he was at the Pentagon working that day. And the Pentagon is what, 12, the walls are like 12 feet thick. And there's not a lot that penetrates the Pentagon. But he was on the opposite side of where the alleged plane came through the Pentagon. And he was working out. There's a workout room at the Pentagon. And he was back there running on the treadmill. And he told me this. I didn't read it somewhere. I talked to him myself personally. And he's a friend of mine, not a stranger. And he told me that day he was back there. And when the alleged plane hit the building, that the building shook a little bit and the lights flickered. That was it. They never lost power at the Pentagon. The lights flickered. And again, he felt a little bit of a shaking, but that was it. And then, all of a sudden, of course, all the alarms went off and everything happened. He had to report to his station, and ended up experiencing things that he'll certainly never forget. But one of the things that he told me, and you don't have to believe me, you can take it, however you want. I'm just telling you what was relayed to me. And what was relayed to me was the events that unfolded that day from the perspective of someone who was there, who was part of the J8 team, who was part of, he was a senior military analyst who was part of the decision making that day. And what he explained to me was that, and I don't even like to say this because I know it goes against, and I feel like I don't want to feel like I'm talking bad about something or taking away something from America that made us stronger at the time. But one of the things he told me was that Flight 93 that came down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. We all hear the stories about, let's roll and all of this. And, and maybe that happened, maybe those passengers did attempt to take control of the airplane. Maybe they did, but I know they weren't successful. And I know that those passengers, certainly didn't crash the plane into the ground there in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. There's a reason why when you go and you look at the scene, there's nothing there. You know what a plane crash looks like. Anybody can look that up. But you can look at the scene and see, no plane crash there. There's not luggage spread all over. There's not anything but a big hole. We know that that's not true. And he explained it to me that what ended up happening, and of course they can't tell Americans this, because if they told Americans the truth, I mean, what would we do? What would we think? Of course. But there is no doubt, and he confirmed this for me. Well, he didn't confirm it for me. I didn't even know. He told this to me, is that our military shot that plane down. And I understand why. It's horrible. I don't like to think about it or talk about it, but our government had no choice. That plane was heading to the White House. They were never going to allow that to happen. They had no choice but to shoot that plane down. And that is why you don't see the debris field you expect, because it was shot down in the air at 35,000 feet, from what I understand, and it disintegrated all across the region. There are still stories that people find pieces of that plane, that maybe the government wasn't able to go back and claim. So there's a lot more to that. Now, my friend also did tell me, being at the Pentagon that day, that he really does believe a plane, that it wasn't not a missile. He believes it was a plane that crashed into the Pentagon, because when this happened, when the alarm went off, he went outside. I mean, it was that easy. He walked outside and went out in front of the Pentagon where everything was going on. And he saw pieces of a plane all across the area. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't a drone that looked like a plane. I don't know. He didn't mention to me about bodies or anything along those lines, but he did see pieces of a plane. So, I'll leave that to you to make your own judgments. I don't want to take away from those folks on Flight 93 who were and still are heroes. They still are. And it's unfortunate what happened. But we got a lot to talk about in a very short amount of time, because we're going to have Colonel Joe Adams joining us today at 8 a.m. So I'm going to jump into some things really quick here. Speaking of 9/11, we're going to listen to what I don't think I'm going to play this whole video, but because it's about 5 minutes long, we don't have time for that. But I want you to hear what Candace Owens has to say about 9/11 and perhaps Israelis being warned ahead of time. And it really kind of makes you think twice about what's going on. Eventually it'll play.
Look at what they did to Julian Assange. I'll tell you guys, in the 9/11 comments section from last week, you guys were dropping all sorts of tidbits, had me at the edge of my seat, and I began researching things I had never even heard of, and I am now completely shaken. So yeah, I showed you guys that video of the Israelis who were celebrating. It turned out that they had connections to the Israeli intelligence apparatus, and the FBI pretty much just let him go for whatever reason. Said, okay, we looked into it, no further follow-up. Then that sort of got memory hold. Memory hold is an expression where they basically never talk about it again, and then we all just forget that it ever happened, and we move on. Well, one of you guys commented and said that I should look into the Israelis that were working at the World Trade Center who were forewarned of the attack. And oh my God, yes, that is another thing, after I researched, that has been completely memory hold, but it is true. So I'm going to show you guys, by the way, because before they say I'm a conspiracy theorist, I had to make sure that I had all of the relevant documents, all the relevant links, and I'm going to include those links for you guys. So just check out the episode. You can look at the links yourself. Here is the very true story of what went down on 9/11. There was an instant messaging service that was called Odigo. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. Odigo, O-D-I-G-O. It was Israeli owned and operated, and they had headquarters that were based 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center. Now, this is according to Haaretz. I'm sure I'm not saying that right. It's a very popular Israeli publication. Check out this headline from them, published September 26th, 2011. So that is 15 days after the attack. It says, Odigo workers were warned of the attacks. That is the headline. And I'm going to read you this piece of the article verbatim. It says, quote, Odigo, the instant messaging service, says that 2 of its workers received messages 2 hours before the Twin Towers attack on September 11th, predicting that the attack would happen. And the company has been cooperating with Israeli and American law enforcement, including the FBI, in trying to find the original sender of the message, predicting the attack, end quote. Seriously, you guys, what the F. And that's not all.
And that's not all. And if you want to see more of Candace Owens, I shared that video on my Telegram page, and of course, if I share it on any other social media platform, I'll be banned. So we're not going to do that. But if you want to listen to a little bit more about Candace Owens has to say, you can check out Telegram. It's on the Tabs on Tap Telegram page. As a matter of fact, I've told you this, but I'll tell you again. I share much more to the Telegram page than I can talk about here, or that I can share here, or on any other social media platform. Again, that's why they want to shut it down. There were a lot of things I shared last night that I couldn't share here because not about 9/11, but about other things. And so always take a look at Telegram. Robert, I was forewarned about something happening in New York City by a jeweler in Buffalo, New York. I contacted the FBI after the attack. Never a call back. Robert, you are not the only one. I watched countless videos yesterday and over the past several years where people said that they had some kind of idea that something was going to happen. And they were, whether it was chatter they heard, or, sometimes people go on different sites and they hear, different messages or see different messages. Of course, internet different back then. We had messaging and that types of thing. And a lot of people called the FBI. A lot of people said something was going to happen. And guess what? None of them received a call back. No follow-up whatsoever. And it's highly, highly unfortunate. Good morning, Amy. You're right. 9/11, we will never forget. Well, and we can't forget. I don't believe the story of what happened. I don't believe anything our government says. And again, it was a pivotal point for me waking up. That was my woke moment where I'm like, okay, now I get it. Now I see what is going on here. And it was actually my son that kind of woke me up to it. He's like, man, what you see on those videos, that's not true. That's not what really happened. And he started showing me these other videos of the building, appearing to implode and some other different things. And man, I woke up and I'll never go back. And now here we are today. Once you wake up, man, you can't go back, can you? Speaking of 9/11, Joe Biden, he knew today was 9/11 day.
The debate, and then tomorrow I'm doing 9/11. I spoke to the vice president. She seems calm, cool, collected. I think she's going to.
Did you hear him? Today, he knew that was, this is what they call by, memory. If you know anyone who has Alzheimer's or are older, they're, elderly, they're losing their cognitive abilities, and you tell them, because I'm dealing with my stepfather right now. He's got a little bit of Alzheimer's, a little bit of dementia, and I have to tell him things, and he'll remember, okay, today is the day the nurse is coming. Today is the day I see my doctor. But, it doesn't really expand much further than that. And he's a, extremely intelligent person, yet that's just how the mind works. And that's Joe Biden. Oh, well, today I'm doing debate. Tomorrow I'm doing 9/11, because that's what somebody's fed to him. I agree with Donald Trump. Where's Joe Biden? Who is running this country? I don't think any of us know. I know they don't know. And, we got about 20 minutes or so before Colonel Joe Adams gives us a call. So we're going to jump into the debate really quick here after, and make sure you hang around after Joe's little talk with us today. We're going to get into vaccines, COVID vaccine, being snuck into tetanus shots, making sure, of course, every person is vaccinated. We're going to talk about Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala Harris, and because I've got a lot to say about that. I really do, especially and I'm not calling any of you out, but I know for sure some of you take your daughters to see Taylor Swift. And I'm not saying boycott Taylor Swift. She's entitled to whatever she wants to believe. But we're definitely going to get into that today after we talk to Colonel Joe Adams. In the meantime, what do you think about this? Did Harris have an earpiece? Did she have an earpiece? Here is her earring. See that there? That's her earring. And she's worn this a lot lately. This is a photo from the debate, but you can go and look at some of her recent rallies. And she's also had these same earrings on. And now I want you to take a look at this. And I know you guys have probably already seen these photos. What do you think about this? The Nova H1 audio earrings. Now, you know that it wouldn't, of course, have to look exactly like this if that's what you're looking for. They could take this gold piece off here and recalibrate that into a different type of setting, and it still work the same way. And Drew Collins, Donald Trump got his butt kicked. And he loves Taylor. Well, of course you love Taylor Swift. And Drew, we're going to prove to you. I know you a minute ago you said the thing with the animals is not true, but it actually is. And we've got plenty of evidence that it is. Good morning, Bill, and good morning, Mary. Mary says, every once in a while, she paused and looked up like she was listening to something. And you're right, Mary. That's exactly what people do when they are listening to something. Robert, did she have contact lens teleprompter as well? I am sure they spared no expense to make sure that Cammie had everything she needed for the debate. And I absolutely do believe that there is more to these earrings than literally meets the eye, because we can see them, can't we? We can see them. So let's go over some of the main talking points for the debate last night. We're going to start here.
When this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I
up.
think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot.
Okay, well, that's true. That was all true, wasn't it? She had 0 votes. She is not the person who's supposed to be on that stage. That's supposed to be Biden. Joe Biden is supposed to be on that stage, not Kamala Harris. She had 0 votes. And if I were a Democrat, I would feel cheated that the person I voted for in the primary is not the person who is up there on that stage. And I think Trump was absolutely correct. And Mary Tainter, you're right. They made Trump's microphone short, so we had to hunch over. And she had a platform. I saw it. Yeah, they did have different types of setups because ABC said, well, Kamala Harris is short, Donald Trump is tall. So they wanted to make sure they were kind of on even footing. And I don't think that they should do that. I don't think that they should do that. And there are a lot of semantics that go into this. And there is no doubt in my mind that they had a psychological expert come in and say, well, what can we do to make Donald Trump look worse? Legally, what can we get away with? And one of those things would be to shorten his microphone so that he does hunch over. The camera angle. There's different things they can do to make sure that he does not look good. But, I feel like Trump won that point. I really do, because he is absolutely right. Democrats completely cheated out of their candidate. I mean, seriously. And what about World War III?
But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign.
Again, he's right. We are heading towards World War III. Ukraine, as a matter of fact, don't you think it's kind of funny how they're trying to get him to say, do you or don't you support what's happening in Ukraine? I wish he would have just came out and said, and I do think he had the perfect answer. I'm worried about human lives, because I'll tell you what, had we, the United States and Europe, if we didn't continue supplying weapons and cash to Ukraine, this war would have been over a long time ago. But you know what? We keep feeding money in, we keep putting aid in, we keep giving them weapons and tanks and everything, planes, everything they might need to keep this war going. And it'll never end until we're all bankrupt. Till all of us are bankrupt, this situation will never end. And because of that, hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost on both sides. That blood is on our hands. It's on Biden's hands. It's on Harris's hands. And but they don't want to take credit for that. But we are heading towards World War III. Just what was it yesterday? Ukraine, 144 drones went into Moscow. That's a big move. They attacked, these drones attacked civilian apartment buildings. They bombarded 3 of 4 Moscow airports. Putin knows what's up. He knows we're trying to get out of this election, and I'm telling you, we're trying hard. We're poking the bear really hard. We are doing our best. Of course, Project 2025. They got him on that, and we know it's not. As a matter of fact, here is the somebody from the Heritage Foundation who created Project 2025 who said that Donald Trump had nothing to do with it.
The breaking news is Trump has nothing to do with Project 2025. Sure, a lot of us have worked in the admin and came together, but this started long before he even announced for.
Exactly. Trump was not part of Project 2025. Of course, that's a talking point they want to throw out there. And, and the animals, that was the greatest point for me. You guys all know exactly what was going down during this debate, don't you? They were fact-checking Donald Trump. They were not fact-checking Kamala Harris. No fact checks for her. At one point, when they were talking about abortion, one of the hosts, she gave the point to Harris. As a matter of fact, Harris hadn't even thought to say that. And this host came up and thought it for her. And why are the hosts debating Trump? That should be between Harris and Trump, not between the hosts. And the part about the animals got me the most, because I'll tell you what, it is happening. I wish that we're going to talk about the animals. We've just got about 10 minutes before Colonel Joe Adam joins us. So I'm going to play through some of this and talk through this fairly quickly after we have him on. Again, we're going to talk about some other things. But I'll tell you what, it is a real problem. And we know Trump hit her hard when it came to the southern border. Maybe she had, of course, prepared answers. You will never convince me that they didn't give her the questions ahead of time. And that is because, they think Donald Trump is the Antichrist, right? They think that he is destroying our country. And because they think he's destroying our country, of course, they're going to give her the questions. I mean, they're going to give her the questions. And she rehearsed these questions. That's why she was in debate camp, because they had them. You can't convince me. I can't prove it. But eventually we'll be able to prove it, just like we did with Donna Brazile. Remember that? But the highlight for me was when they were talking about the animals that are being killed across this country. And I feel like we have to talk about this. We touched base on it yesterday because it's true. How can these moderators sit there and say, well, the county commissioner, whoever that person is, they said there's no truth to it? Well, you know what? I'm going to show you guys. And of course, I am always preaching to the choir on this show. But I am going to show you that,
well,
yes.
I'll tell you, I agree with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan.
Withdraw out of Afghanistan.
4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden.
And we know what happened.
Well, I will tell you, I agreed
with what happened in Afghanistan, and we can get to that another time. I didn't mean to play that. I want to play this 911 call for you first.
Clark County Communications.
Yes, ma'am. I got a question. This is a non-emergency line, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm sitting here. I'm riding on the trail going to my orientation for my job today, and I see a group of Haitian people. There was about 4 of them. They all had geese in their hand. They got away. I couldn't make out the first 3 of the license plate, but I got the numbers. The last numbers was 9898, and it was a gray Toyota Tacoma they took off on. There was about 4 of them. There was 2 men, 2 women. I couldn't tell the age because I'm in a hurry going to this orientation, so I don't be late.
What direction did they go?
They went up towards the middle of towards downtown.
Okay, and what path are you on?
Right now, hold on just a second. I'm coming to the intersection of. Give me a second here. It says Water and Warder Street.
Water and Warder. Is that the area you saw them?
All right, so that was.
What did you do?
This other one.
Why'd you kill the cat? Smile for me. Smile, what did you? Go like this. Did you eat that cat? Did you eat it? No, why'd you kill it? Did you guys see all this?
No, we pulled up and she was just laying there with me.
Did you see her eating it?
Eating it.
She was eating it?
Yeah, she was.
You call the Humane Society to see if they'll come pick this cat up. It's just...
All right. So what you saw there, and what's funny is I posted that, I didn't post that 911 call onto Facebook last night. I posted the photo of the Haitian man carrying the geese, and and Facebook gave me a warning that they would make my profile not recommendable if I continued to keep that there. So I had no choice but to delete it, or otherwise you wouldn't be able to share this show. And it was unfortunate. It had been shared already like 46 times before they forced me to delete it. You see right there, you hear the call. But here's the thing. And Landon says, I know the vermin are doing it, but that cat did not happen in Springfield. No, it did not. And it was in Canton, and the woman has a distinct ghetto accent. And so did her cousin that called it in, not Haitian. I posted the entire thing on my page. Thank you, Landon, for that comment. It doesn't really matter. If you go on my Telegram page, I can't share it here, but there are videos of people standing in the streets, and they're with their tents, where they live, and they have fires built, and they're roasting cats over the fire. I can't share that here because I'd get in a lot of trouble. But these things are happening. As a matter of fact, I'll give you some other incidents. Don't have video footage of it. But there were three Myanmar teens here in our country illegally. This was in Manlius, New York. And they captured, there was a beloved swan. Her name was Faye. She had 4 babies. And they captured this swan and cooked it and ate it along with her 4 babies. Where we have a illegal Honduran in Nebraska, it was actually, I think, 2 or 3 Hondurans, and they were capturing bald eagles and cooking and eating them. And just so you know, and Terria, Landon just talked to us about her not being a migrant, but I mean, doesn't really matter. Quite honestly, doesn't really matter if there's people eating and killing our animals in the streets. But yes, mental illness or something is different, of course, than migrants. But there is plenty of footage out there of migrants. We saw the video. We heard the 911 call. Unfortunately, it is happening in Landon, if you and Tara, think that this is not happening, then you both need to go out and watch some videos, listen to these 911 calls, and maybe you'll have a little bit of a different opinion about what's taking place. And yes, Drew Collins, it is actually true. There are pets being eaten. There are people reporting it, people who are seeing it. I could have showed you 20 different videos today, but we don't have time for that because we have Colonel Joe Adams joining us in 5 minutes, which is very, very important. However, the reason why this is happening, and it's not because these people are bad people, it's not because they're crazy or anything else. Their life in their country where they're from is very different than how it is here in the United States. In many of these countries, and quite often, people are starving in other countries. We have famine in other countries. If they see an animal, that animal is food. It's not a pet. We here in the United States, where we're, for the most part, very, very food secure, when we see ducks on a pond, we think, oh, look at those cute ducks. When we go to a lake and we see, again, ducks, swans, etc., we think, oh, look at those cute ducks, or we see turtles or frogs or whatever kind of animals. Bald eagles in this country is our national, of course, bird. And we would never eat those. To us, those are pets. Those are something pretty to look at. But in other countries, that's called food. So when people come to the United States, and of course we know in other countries, plenty of people do eat cats and dogs. We talked about it yesterday. And that is no different. When these people come here to our country, of course, they see these as food sources, not pets. They are not pets in other countries. They are sources of food. And so we can expect when people come here, they're not going to necessarily assimilate. Because why? I mean, they're not going to come here and automatically adapt to our culture. And that's the biggest problem we have, I think, with immigration, whether it's legal or illegal immigration. People come to our country and they have a very difficult time assimilating. And then we have these circumstances where eating animals is just one of many, many different things. But it really bothered me watching the debate last night when they were calling out Trump and telling him, oh, well, we talked to the city manager. It's not true. It's not true. And yes, Terry, you're right. People from third world countries will eat anything and they aren't assimilating. It's very difficult for them to assimilate here. Landon, she was just a run of the mill psycho, not an imported one. And I don't disagree. Just saying that was not. Have been searching Telegram all day yesterday and can't find many pictures or videos. Landon, I shared some to my Tabs on Tap page last night, and I'll have more to share because, man, there are a lot of them out there. I wish that I could have shared some of these to Facebook, but I think we all know what would happen to me if I did, like what almost happened yesterday. But that's the biggest problem we have with migrants in our country, illegal or legal, is that they have a very difficult time assimilating. You know, remember when we went through that phase where we had people coming into our restaurants and suing restaurants because they had bacon on the menu? God forbid, you know, here in America, we have bacon on the menu, but just because you're Muslim and you can't eat pork. I mean, we in this country, you know, we're not going to assimilate to your third world country that you came from, are we? Nope. Not going to happen here where we are a free, well, we used to be free. I'm not so sure we're free anymore. And speaking of, again, Colonel Joe Adams getting ready to join us here. And after Joe Adams, we're going to talk about vaccines. We're going to talk about COVID shots being snuck into tetanus shots, certainly happening. I want to talk about Taylor Swift and her, of course, promoting, supporting, endorsing Kamala Harris. I don't think any of that surprises us at all, not even slightly. I want to talk about a little update about Tren de Aragua and what they are up to, of course, also here illegally. I didn't think that Trump talked about that enough in the debate last night. I felt like he was on the defensive the entire time, and he really didn't get to make the points that he wanted to make. And I have no doubt in my mind that they did that intentionally because they didn't want him to make very valid points. I think they knew psychologically that he would defend himself. I wish that he would have answered the questions, and that I still think he did magnificently considering 3-on-1. However, I do wish he would have answered the questions. I wish he would have got them on more points. And, you know, I kept thinking to myself, I know he's walking a thin line. He doesn't want to be seen as somebody who's mean or cruel or, you know, to women. But at the same time, man, I was like, get her, Trump, get her. And unfortunately, it did not happen. At the end of the show, right before we head out this morning, make sure you stick around because we're going to talk about voter fraud. I'm going to talk again about turnout for Trump because I have a big announcement myself to make. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm not going to say today is going to be my last show because it's not, but things are going to change starting tomorrow. We are going to be taking the show on the road. So we're heading to Georgia tomorrow. So we're going to talk about that. After we talk to our good friend, Colonel Joe Adams, who is waiting in the wings here patiently. Good morning, Colonel Joe Adams of the Washington Guard. Of course, a veteran Marine. Thank you so much for joining us today, Colonel Joe Adams.
Yeah, good morning. We got a copy this morning?
So far, we got a copy. Everything is good and going good.
All right, real good. Yeah, I enjoyed the debate last night. That was interesting. You know, people have to understand that Kamala Harris was a prosecuting attorney and all that, so she went into her prosecutorial pitch, the act that they put on when they're trying to prosecute sometimes. So at times in the debate last night, she was like acting like she was actually prosecuting Donald Trump. So whoever advised her about that did a good job. She did better than I thought she would do. I wish President Trump would be a little more congenial and maybe smile a couple of times, but he didn't do that. Nothing I didn't expect, but I think she did a good job as far as Kamala Harris could. So we'll have to get past that.
Do you think she was coached, or do you think that her earrings were an earpiece?
If I had to bet on it, yeah, she has somebody talking to her. Sure. The most interesting thing that stood out in the entire interview to me with Kamala Harris was the fact that the first question out of the box was to her, and they asked, do you feel that we're better off now than we were 4 years ago? She totally bypassed that question and went on to her, prepared speech that she was going to open up with. She never answered that.
Nope.
And of course, she couldn't answer that because we're in worse shape now than 4 years ago. We're in worse shape today than we were yesterday because of the Biden administration.
We are. And, Joe, I'm sure you noticed as well as we all did, it was 3 against 1. They didn't fact check her. They did fact check Donald Trump. The moderators, they were anything but unbiased. I mean, they gave it to her. We both know that.
Yeah, I'm really surprised he even would agree to an ABC commentators grilling him. I guess because it's, if he didn't do that, then they wouldn't have any debate at all. So I guess this is the last debate, right?
Well, we don't know yet. It apparently Harris's team has came out and said that they will debate again. I haven't heard yet. Some of you probably already know which venue. I don't know. I know they refuse, of course, to debate on Fox News. They're not going to do that because they don't want the unfair advantage. But what's funny about that is that had they had the debate at Fox News, I really do think that the moderators would have been exactly that. They would have shown no bias. They would have carried on with the debate, and it probably would have been the best debate we've ever had in the history of our country. However, ABC, Trump has an active lawsuit against ABC. The people who own ABC, the CEO of ABC, they're amongst Kamala Harris's closest friends. They're some of her closest friends, so it doesn't make any sense.
There was nothing fair about the debate, put it that way, but he expected that. I mean, I think we all did. That was a debate, but was it really a debate or just a presentation of Kamala Harris's face she puts on when she was a trial lawyer? That's all. I didn't get much out of it other than the lies. And of course, they hammered him about being a convicted criminal. Well, so what? Anyway, it was kind of a waste of time.
I thought so too. It was kind of boring, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. I had to force myself to watch the whole thing because I saw when she didn't answer the first question at all, and she couldn't answer that. I knew what to expect. So that's what you get. Hey,
yep.
People, this Haitian thing, you were talking about, and that's common practice in Haiti. The Haitians are the worst sucking scum on the planet. They are horrible. I've got one of the members of the Washington Guard is a high up director of FEMA, and we compared notes. And of course, when I was in the Marine Corps, my area of expertise and responsibility was the country of Haiti, and I know a lot about that country and the people and how it got to the point to where it is today. And they are sucking scum. Period. They should never be allowed into this country. They're the most horrible people on the planet. They're worse than the West Africans, which I was talking to some people the other day in my think tank. This European thing, especially with Poland's going to issue a shoot on sight if you try and cross those borders. Most of Europe, so much for the EU. Remember when the EU was at its best and you could travel from one country to another? Those days are gone. The illegal alien migration, whatever they want to call it, has destroyed the EU. They're coming apart. All of the countries are going to start issuing heavy sanctions on people trying to come into that country. And of course they have to. If they don't, it's over with. Germany's, keep an eye on Germany. Germany's problem with the migration is the fact that they're still hurting from World War II as far as the Nazism over there, and anything that they do against another people can be viewed as actually like Nazis. Well, they're not, but so they're dragging their feet, but they're going to get on board. But the EU is going to be shut down as far as going from country to country. But and the people in Poland, see that the leaders of Poland are doing what the people want, which is unlike the United States. We don't want all of this illegal immigration into this country, but we get it anyway.
Right.
And Germany's taken in 1 million Ukraine refugees. 1 million. Now, Ukraine's only had 41 million people, and 20% have left. And Ukraine's like, I don't know, a little smaller than Texas or a little larger than Texas, and Russia is twice the size of the United States. So this thing's far from over, but Ukraine's already lost 70,000 soldiers. And what I try and do, I try and put things in perspective. They've lost 11,000 civilians, killed or wounded, 70,000 soldiers, 70,000. And that war is going into its third year. And in Vietnam, we lost 58,000 troops, 58,000. And that war lasted almost 20 years. So put that in perspective. So 1 in 5 Ukrainians have left the country. It'll take them 3 generations, 4 generations to recover from this, even if and when, and they will, Russia takes Ukraine. But NATO's fallen apart. Everybody knows it. And this thing about limited use of missiles to strike inside Russia, come on. I mean, like, that is so ridiculous. I mean, they're already doing it. And
they are. And Joe, when did it become okay to attack civilians? Because Ukraine, as I spoke about not too long ago this morning, Ukraine yesterday bombarded Moscow with 144 drones, I believe it was. They bombarded 3 out of 4 Moscow airports. These drones hit civilian high rises where people live, hundreds of apartments. How is that okay? When did we allow this to be okay? And why isn't anyone talking about it?
Well, one thing, they're going to keep messing around, and Putin's going to nuke Kiev. I'm telling you right now, strategically take them out, which will change the whole facet as far as all the agreements with all the countries about nuclear weapons. But they're going to keep messing up. You have to understand that Putin has to win this war. If he doesn't, he's a dead man. That's the way the Russians work. So whatever he has to do to win the war, he's going to do it. And as far as casualties, they don't care. If people understood Russian tactics like I do, they understand casualties is a collateral damage. They don't care. They don't even know how many people they lost in World War II. It could be 70 million.
Right.
And they survived. I mean, you're messing with the big dog on the block. Right now, he's fighting a war with gloves on. When we take some gloves off, Ukraine and NATO is going to come apart. If NATO was such a great organization, then why don't they take in Ukraine right now into NATO? Because that way all the NATO countries would have to participate in the war, and they don't want that, because if they let Ukraine into NATO alliance goes up against Putin. Putin's coming after all. They're scared of Putin. Understand this. They're terrified of Putin.
As they should be.
Yeah, Putin. Russia was never a member of NATO, but NATO turned around and made him part of the Security Council for NATO, just trying to get him in the game. But anyway, Ukraine's gone. They've already lost. They just haven't raised the white flag yet.
Oh yeah,
because we won't let them raise the white flag. It would be.
And I talked about that earlier, Joe. Exactly what I was saying is that this war would have been over a long time ago had we not kept feeding into it. United States and Europe, they run out of weapons, we give them more. I mean, our goal, I think, is to bankrupt ourselves and every other European country in an effort to exhaust Russia so that Russia becomes weak. We want Putin to use everything they have and not have any more supplies so that we can go in and, of course, and probably attack Russia. I want to ask you about one thing, Joe. Is it true, because this is what Russia alleges, is it true that we, the United States and NATO, do we have our troops stationed all along the Russian border, particularly in Poland? Because that is what I heard yesterday.
Spec Ops is there. Yeah, the special operations teams are there, but they've been there for months.
Yeah, well, this is supposedly something new, where Putin came out yesterday and said that, you know what, United States, NATO are positioning their troops all along the Russian border, particularly in Poland. And I was just curious because I hear different things. Now, this was a direct public statement, coming out of Russia, but you never know what's true, what's propaganda as well. We've heard out of Russia from different, not Putin himself, from different generals and so on that work with him, that it's not just Ukraine in Russia, it is NATO in Russia. That, we have Americans there, we have the French, we have Germans, and Canadians of all people are actually part of these Ukraine excursions into Russia. What do you think about that?
Well, there's even New Zealand troops over there.
Yeah.
I mean, New Zealand, and so what's Harris' position? We have no troops in combat zones? Oh, I'm sorry. What happened to Syria? I mean, come on. It's all smoke and mirrors. All smoke and mirrors. But
and people will believe it.
So I find it interesting that Poland and Hungary are the first to step up and say, they're accepting Ukrainian refugees, but no African and Middle Easterns as of, I think it was Sunday. They're closing the borders. That's it. They'll let other people in, but they're not letting the troublemakers, who are the African immigration and the Middle Easterns, the two troublemakers, which they're all here. But what are they going to do? Everybody keeps talking about all the illegal aliens in this country. Even Trump talks about going to deport them, but still nobody has come forward and said how they're going to do that. I know how I would do it, but nobody's come forward. Nobody has a plan. They say they have a plan, but they don't disclose the plan. They don't have a plan. They don't know
I
what
don't
to
believe
do.
they do.
You're supposed to learn. You're supposed to learn by your mistakes. God, I have. And Europe is now. If you look at Europe and the immigration problem they've got in those countries and the people that's coming in, they're here in the United States and they're still coming across the border. Still coming. Now,
every single day, Joe.
If you want, people ask me all the time, a civil war in this country, what's it going to look like? Well, look no further than immigration. Right now, England, Great Britain and France, they don't know what to do. They're being overran. They're already in a civil war. That's why England shut down the media. They don't want anybody talking about it. But they're in big trouble. People are going to have to take up arms and defend themselves, and these mobs and gangs are going to have to go. I think it's going to be up to the average citizen to defend their own property, because this immigration with these gangs and everything is not going to end well. Before this is over, and we're talking about a decade of internal problems, there's going to be blood in the streets in this country in the internal civil war against the people that we have allowed to come in here. Now, wait till the terrorist strikes attack starts. We talked about that last time. The FBI said we're going to get hit from internally. When that starts, here it goes.
You're right, Joe.
Yep.
We're so close to, I talk about this probably more than any other show on the planet about the Venezuelan gang members that are here, the Tren de Aragua, because you know why? Because there are thousands of them here, over 400 in New York City alone, thousands of them across our country. Yesterday, they took over a hotel in El Paso, Texas. They are attacking oil workers in refineries in Texas. To me, it's already here. It's already here. The face of terrorism has changed. We all wait for the Allah Akbar, terrorists to come and shoot up a nightclub, but the terrorists are already here. These Venezuelan gangs, they should be deemed a terror organization. They are already here. And Joe, to your point, when are people going to wake up and realize that while right now they're taking over these apartment buildings and hotels, when is it that they're going to come over and take over your home? Because that's what's next.
Oh, they will. They will. That's why everyone has prepared to protect themselves. Never more before in this country is that more important. They're saying now they're on the planet, 150 million people have been displaced and migrated to other countries. And I think there's nothing funny about this, but I find humor in almost everything. I don't know how many wars I've laughed through. The least immigrated country in the world is Mexico.
True.
Mexico. Yeah, because who wants to live there, right? But, you know, with all this gang violence and all these things going on in the country, people have stopped talking about the cartel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in 2010, when I was with Border Patrol, there was a great influx of weapons into this country. Landmines, explosives, machine guns coming this way, not going into Mexico. So the gangs are the cartel is sitting back, fully armed, and now they're organized, but they're letting all this other debris going on in the media to distract from what they're really doing. We never go after the problem. I mean, the cartels here, they're a small army in this country. And there's several cartels here. Eventually, because what I was told initially by Border Patrol intelligence is the fact that I said, well, why all the weapons up here? Because someday there's going to be a turf war in this country, like in Mexico, between the cartels. Right. Not just one. People talk about cartel. There's more than one cartel. You got as many as 5 different cartels already in this country, fully armed. That could even look like a civil war when it happens. So
it could. And Colonel Joe People, we're talking to, by the way, to Colonel Joe Adams of the Washington Guard, and people need to be prepared. They need to have a plan of action. And, you know, I talked to an FBI friend of mine last week, and he told me that the reason why our government, why our police departments, why the FBI are not going after, let's say, Tren de Aragua or some of the other illegals that are in our country is because they're scared. They are scared to confront these people because they know once they do, we already have Tren de Aragua saying that they have 1,000 of their members around the country who their only task is to ambush and kill police officers. And we know, what was it last week, the week before? They did attack and shoot a Texas police officer with a shotgun. And, you know, she thankfully is still hanging in there, still alive. But my gosh, what do we do when we're in this country where the gangs outnumber the police? They outgun the police. Don't you think we all have to have a plan?
Well, without a doubt. I mean, the bottom line is eventually you're going to be on your own. But the other problem is in the blue areas, even here in Washington, with the mayor and the council, they're Democrats. And the problem is, I don't know when local authorities were ran, I'm talking about law enforcement, when they had to answer to the mayor's office. The mayor is in an elected position, for the most part, didn't go to the police academy, aren't trained, have no idea of tactics, and it's easy to tell somebody something when you don't have to go. The people that are calling the shots in this country aren't getting shot at, and lies the problem.
Yes.
If they would let the police officers in this country and the FBI do what they're supposed to be doing, we would have a lot less problems, but they won't do that. How many times do I stop a police officer? Well, I'll give you an example. We had some illegals downtown Washington that let's just say I detained. And when the police showed up, I said, who are these people? Well, you have to go on down the street, sir. You can't. I said, I don't have to go down the street. Who are these people? I said, they're driving a vehicle with expired Texas plates. Who owns this vehicle? Well, we can't ask them that. You can't ask them that? You can't say, oh, excuse me, sir, you're not from here. What brings you to Washington? We can't answer that. We can ask that. Well, why can't you ask that? Unanimously, all police officers tell me we can only do what we're allowed to do.
That's right.
And that is not law enforcement. So, you ever heard of suspicious people, suspicious activity? Who are these people? Millions of times we keep asking, who are these people? We don't know who they are. This is all. See, you're supposed to, like I say, you're supposed to learn by your mistakes. Well, we have learned by our mistakes, but I'm talking about the Biden administration. Biden has seen the disruption that illegal immigration has happened in Europe. It's tearing Europe apart. That's why he promotes it here. They're still coming.
Yes.
Our borders are opened up the borders by doing nothing. And then I told you before, when I left Eagle Pass, Border Patrol's mission statement was to expedite as many people across the border into this country as possible, as fast as possible. That is not learning that's learning negatively by other people's mistakes. Europe is coming apart.
Europe is definitely on the downside. And Joe, on this show, I don't know how often you watch or listen, but I show a lot of videos, and people probably wonder why I talk so much about foreign news. I showed videos yesterday about what's happening in Ireland with illegals taking over in Ireland. I talked about Australia and how I played a video of a man in Australia, an Australian man who said, soon Australia is going to be a Muslim country. It is going to be Sharia law. You know why I show that? Because Joe, as you know, what we see happening over there, it is going to happen here. It's already started. We're just a pace behind. That's it.
Well, on the Phoenix 13 think tank that I'm a member of, all we're doing, we concentrate on studying the Islamic problem in this country and future problems. You want to see civil wars? We're going to go to a war with the Muslim community in this country eventually. It's inevitable. You're right, they're taking over. And we let them do that.
Yes.
Now, the Biden administration, because of he's in cahoots with the New World Order, want that. They want internal conflict. And out of the Marxist playbook, you can't have socialism or communism until you create mass chaos within the community. And that's what they're doing. Somebody should look, Kamala Harris is a part of it. She's just a puppet, okay? She's not making any decisions. They're out to cause so much chaos in this country. War breaks out, martial law, laying NATO troops here, house to house gun confiscation. It's all a big plan. So,
yes.
Like the people at Eagle Pass said, when you go back to Missouri, tell your people, tell your community to arm their families.
Yes, absolutely, Joe. I couldn't agree more, because you know what? We already talk about 911 and how if you call 911, of course, police, they're busy. They've got a lot going on. They're here to pick up the pieces. After the crime has already happened, very rarely can they get to your home before you have to protect yourself. It is up to you to protect your home. It is up to you. And eventually, unfortunately, Americans, Joe, they're not going to wake up until it's at their doorstep. And so our job is to try to tell people, hey, get some steps ahead of it. Protect yourself, protect your family, protect your home before it ends up on your doorstep. And, I think we all know what's going to happen in November. What's going to happen on November 5th, November 6th, going into January. It doesn't matter who wins. It doesn't matter who wins the election. Things are going to get crazy either way.
Yeah, even if Donald Trump's elected, they're going to cause so many problems. He won't be able to get anything done. So either way, we got bad times coming. And I hate to say that.
We do. But you're right. You're right.
I hate to always be Dr. Doom, but I see nothing good on the horizon. Nothing.
You're right, Joe. And I wish all the listeners had been with you on Saturday. You gave a fantastic speech. And I just want to know, before you head out today, if you want to recap on that. I got to thank you for introducing me to Marshall Teague, by the way, who was your featured speaker. It was a fantastic event. It was so good to see you. And you gave a fantastic speech.
No, I appreciate that. But I got a community first. I can't protect the United States, but I can help protect this community. And the other thing that Border Patrol and the Texas Rangers, which is now safety, whatever that thing is, and on state troopers, and even I talked to the National Guard, and they said when they did some research on me when I was at Eagle Pass, they found out about the Washington Guard, and they said other communities need to do what you do, Colonel, in your community by assisting our first responders, training your community to be self-sufficient and prepare. They were nuts on prepare. Tell your people, get prepared, because it's coming.
Yes.
And I hate to say that, but first responders are responding to a situation that's already happened or is happening. And I use the Mark McCloskey's as an example. And when I talked Saturday, we talked about the iconic photograph of Mark McCloskey and his wife standing out front of their mansion with weapons, and Mark didn't have any shoes on. Because the other thing I emphasize is when it happens to you, it's going to happen so fast, you won't have any time to prepare for anything. Mark McCloskey shows up, all he did prepare, he grabbed a rifle, came out front and said, "Oh, not today, people, not today." He didn't have any shoes.
Thank God he was prepared.
When I showed my wife the initial picture of McCloskey in front of his mansion, I said, "What do you take from this photograph?" She goes, "Well, he's got an AR-15. He's ready." That's not what I take away from this photograph. He didn't have any shoes on, and he's in a pink polo shirt. And we laughed about that at the banquet. That fact that it happened so fast. The only preparation he had was grab the rifle. Now I'm sure Mark would have preferred to have been out there with shoes on, and like I said at the banquet, and instead of that pink gay polo shirt, he liked to have his black, Trump or Death Before Dishonor T-shirt, a little more intimidating. But no, the only thing he had time to prepare for, he grabbed a rifle that he kept behind the door. Nothing else. Where's fire extinguisher? After that event, he went out and bought 50 fire extinguishers and got them in every room in his house, preparing.
It's all about preparation.
We must have 30 here. Why? Because you're on your own. Fire department's on the way. You're on your own. Mm-hmm. You got to get the mindset that help is on the way. The cavalry is en route, but the cavalry's not there yet. What are you going to be doing?
Right. That's exactly right. And Joe, as part of the Washington Guard, I know you have musters, you have these different exercises. I know preparation is a big part of that. Even though I'm a little bit of a further distance from you. I haven't joined the Guard yet, but I'm going to. So expect to see my application coming through email. And because even though I'm not proximity wise close, it's worth it to me to drive, because I hear about your musters. I know you have a great, fantastic group of people. I know so many of the members of the Washington Guard, but what does a typical muster look like?
Of course, I've got to do my Dr. Doomsday speech. I start off the muster with bringing intelligence up to the surface and telling them what's going on behind the scenes. And then we have training sessions. They break up into groups and train with different skills, everything from first aid and, of course, weapons first. Now, another thing about McCloskey, that's an example of why we teach weapons first, everything second. Mark McCloskey only had one. What was the most important thing that Mark McCloskey could do to protect his home and his family? Grab his weapon. So weapons first, everything second. Goes back to that quiz I gave you before. Was if somebody offers you if you had no preparation and it hit the fan, and your neighbor came to you and said, "I'll give you one thing, but just one thing only: a 5-pound bag of rice to feed your children, or an AR-15. What do you take?" Right. Weapons first. Without that, you're nobody. So that's why we teach first. And we have elderly women that we teach to shoot from sitting in a chair because they can't stand very long. I don't care who you are. Whatever you have to do to protect your home and your family, do it. At least put up a fighting chance. So weapons first, but every aspect of all the skills necessary to support our first responders, the real heroes in this community. That's what we train with. That's all we do in prep. And of course, we got this new headquarters we're building now. The 50 acres was donated to the Guard, and the monies for all the equipment for the ranges. We have 3 ranges now. We're going to build a 4th. But we have associate members in 12 states that follow me. And people like you that aren't in the area, but by supporting the Guard and joining the Guard, you are you are a part of that. It shows people that you know what you should be doing. You're just not in the exact area to take advantage of the training. But, well, I'll give you an example. I've developed a relationship with Ted Nugent. I'm going to go meet with him, and he will be an associate member of the Guard. Marshal Teague will be an associate member of the Guard. So we're getting out there and spread out, but you don't have to be immediately right here. By joining the Guard, you're making a statement that I understand what's going on and to be a part of what we do. And also, we come up with some intelligence reports of stuff that the average person can't get.
Right.
So what was somebody say the other day? Oh, Ted Nugent said, we need 1,000 more Washington Guard organizations in this country because we're doing it the right way.
That's right.
Unfortunately,
absolutely right.
Well, I talked to other militias all over the planet, and they're always shocked when they find out that we're not even in our third year yet doing this. And they say, well, what's your secret? I said, well, your secret is being surrounded by good people and giving them a responsibility. I can't do everything. I could, but I can't. We're too large. So what I do, I've recruited some of the best instructors and best trainers out there who like-minded people, and it's them, it's not me. But I do find one flaw in all of the other militias and first responder organizations, support organizations, the fact that they lack in leadership. I had one militia call me and ask about our structure, administrative structure, all that. And I said, well, I suspect that you have a leadership problem. He goes, oh, no. We elect new leaders every 2 years. I go, you elect your leaders. Uh-huh. Yeah, I said, you're too democratic. Military and protective structure is not based on electing a populist elective. No, when you find a good leader, you stay with them. People are very suspicious about the fact that I even moved out here for this and came out of nowhere. No, I moved my family here for a defensive posture. And I said, I've got to move to an area where I can organize the community. And that's what's happened. We've got a map with all the little dots on it of all the members in Franklin County and surrounding counties. And they all come together for one thing, and that's to support our first line of defense, first responders. And I said, wow, I didn't see this one coming. So what we've actually done is developed an organization that has brought the community together over a common cause, taking care of our families and taking care of the community. Now, what if every do that? I mean, that's amazing. These people in the Guard never knew each other until they joined.
Absolutely. And Joe, every time I come to any type of event, every time I've come out and seen you in person, I have met so many people that surround the Guard. So many, and they are all such wonderful people.
Yeah.
All walks of life, all different types.
I saw a comment on your line. Who will come get our guns? Our army? No, it's not that. They've got to create enough chaos where they can land peacekeeping forces here. That's the excuse. That's the end result. And foreigners will eventually ask for the guns. It's inevitable. They cannot complete their mission until they get our guns. That's why guns are so important.
You are absolutely correct. And Joe, it's coming. I feel like it's already here, and it's going to get so much worse, and we have to be prepared. How can people reach out to the Washington Guard? How can you join? And we've got to get more people involved.
Well, they just go to our website, thewashingtonguard.com, which I've only ever seen the website one time. That's administration's situation. So, or patriots at thewashingtonguard.com. Find us. There'll be something you can punch on there to apply. And of course, everybody succumbs to a background check. And so somebody at the event, I think it was the guy from News Talk STL, that we do extensive background checks on all our members for now.
Yes.
For now. When it hits the fan, no more background checks. Everybody's going to get involved. So for right now, we appease law enforcement to make sure all of our people have a good background. But I've had some interesting people that could not pass a background check, and I told them, just said, well, don't forget us someday. It won't matter.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you do that. I'm glad you have a definite pulse on the entire group. All of the fantastic people. They all absolutely adore and admire you. That was so obvious on Saturday. Well, Colonel Joe Adams, I certainly appreciate you joining us today. Please, anyone, you can see the ticker across the bottom. Make sure you send out an email to patriots@thewashingtonguard.com. And Joe, as you know, and I'm going to talk about this here shortly, I'm going to be on the road for the next 50 days. And I'm going to talk to everybody about that here in a few moments. But, you're still going to be joining me every Wednesday, as long as you want to continue to join me, where the show might be on the road, but we're still doing a show. And I cannot wait. I know you're going to have always such a resource of information. And, when I'm out on the road and I'm talking to different people, I'm going to make sure that everybody knows who Colonel Joe Adams is, as well as the Washington Guard. So thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it more than you know. And I hope you have a really fantastic day.
All right. Good luck on the road. We need people like you out there. Hey, why don't you take my wife with you?
I will. Is she ready?
Get ready, Deanna. You're leaving.
She is.
Thanks,
more
guys.
than.
I love everybody. See you next Wednesday.
Thank you, Joe. Have a fantastic, fantastic day. Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guard. If you want to reach out to Colonel Joe Adams, you can do that at patriots@thewashingtonguard.com. Cannot wait to have Joe on again next Wednesday. And speaking of, things are going to change maybe a little bit, not a whole lot, but I am headed out tomorrow on the road. Turnoutfortrump.com. You can see you can see the links across the ticker there. Check it out. Check it out, because I'll tell you what, it is simple. It is easy. If you even want to send me your information, you can come along with me. Heading to Georgia. Think about that. We talk. It's time to take action. Colonel Joe Adams taking action, of course, with the Washington Guard. I am taking action. I hope all of you do the same thing. We can all do our part. And I'll tell you why we need to do our parts. Because these elections, man, we all know, and this is probably the most important election we've ever had. The most important election ever. Because if we don't win this thing, man, we are doomed, because they will never allow Trump. He's not going to be able to run again. So, yes, people will step up in his place, but they're never going to allow us to get this far. And I see so much going on, all of the cheating that's taking place already. I have some statistics here I want to go over really quick. And I'll tell you, seeing that debate last night just reiterated more for me that we have to pay attention. We have to be ready. It's too easy. And I know I get it. It is too easy to sit back and try to think that nothing is going to happen, that nothing is going to make a difference. But yet it does. And we can, whether or not you want to go out, and Darren says, we're in Georgia, right outside of Chattanooga. Whether you want to work at your local poll, you can do that. There's so many different things that we can do to make sure we get out the vote. We have to start fighting fire with fire. And I have some statistics here. If I can find them, my phone, as you guys all know, is not as cooperative as it was before I downloaded iOS 18. So here we go. Think about this. You can already see the election being rigged. It is already happening. And if you're here, if you're sticking around, in a few moments after we talk a little bit about elections, I'm going to jump really quick. We don't have a lot more time about, again, COVID vaccines being snuck into tetanus shots. We're going to talk about Taylor Swift. But first, I want to make sure we cover this. And that is, look at this. The Social Security Administration, some of you have probably already seen this report. I have posted it personally a couple of times. Now, this is already being reported. Think about this. People registering to vote without ID in the United States. Think about these massive numbers. So in Texas, there were 3,156,307 people that have registered to vote who do not have an ID. Pennsylvania, 1,632,111. Arizona, 1,366,942. Georgia, 250,059. North Carolina, 387,131. Nevada, 71,521. Missouri, we talked a little bit about Missouri yesterday, and dead voters, 32,000 dead voters registering to vote in February of 2024. It's happening, Missouri. 1,746,522 people registered to vote who do not have an ID. Think about that. These people do not have ID. We see it happening. It's playing out. All we can do is fight it as best we can. I've got a little video here. It's not super easy to hear. I'm going to show it to you because I do think it's important to try to hear it as well as we can. Because what's happening is we have people, we know what happens, and we don't do this. Unfortunately, it's always going to be.
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President.
I don't know why that video keeps popping up. That one just randomly plays. Here it is right here. Listen closely.
That's where they come. Because they live on where do they sleep? On the street. They sleep right outside the church, right at that's the residence center. Roof Street and if they sleep in that area, the description, that's the residence centers. You have to give them include a mailing address. If the church has a box that she's gonna share with them, a box is fine. It's fine. Okay. It's the mailing address. Thank you.
Okay, what they're talking about there, it was very difficult to hear. Somebody's recording it from the back, and this is why it's important to attend these meetings, even though you might be a Republican, voting Republican, to go to meetings that might be geared towards Democrats, because you hear these things, and that's somebody recording from the back of the room. That's in Dallas County. And what they're talking about is they're explaining to people who are going out, very similar to what I might be doing here over the next several days, is these people are being told to falsify the election. They're telling people, yeah, you're going to come across these homeless people and know they don't have an address. Use the church. They sleep in front of a church. Use the church's address. Well, that is illegal. You can't do that. They're talking about different ways in which you can illegally register people to vote. And don't think it's just happening in Dallas County. I mean, this is happening all across the country. And we can only do our best to fight fire with fire. We know what's coming. We know what's going to happen. I don't think there's a whole lot we can do to stop it, but we can do our best. So I am going to be going out with Turnout for Trump. You can go to turnoutfortrump.com. I will be heading to Georgia, Chattanooga, Tennessee for some training, then heading out to Georgia, and where I will be part of a large group of people. They're still looking for, I believe, 10,000 people all across the country to go to these battleground states. You go, it's an app, you connect to the app, they tell you which houses to go to. And these are people, the houses that we'll be visiting, they are people that are registered Republicans who have not voted in a long time. So it's our job to go out, talk to these people and say, hey, you're a registered Republican. Why haven't you voted? Are you going to vote in the election this year? Are you going to vote for Donald Trump? And this is why you should vote for Donald Trump. This is why your vote matters. And feel free to join me. Feel free to join me. You don't have to have any special skills, and they will pay you. Turnout for Trump will pay you $40 an hour to go out. You can work up to 90 hours a week to go out and canvass. That is how important this election is to us. It's so important. Don't do it for the money, though. Man, you got to do it because you know how important this election is. And it is vitally, vitally important because, man, we're going to lose our country. I see it happening. It's slipping out of our grip. It's coming. And then, of course, not to help, we had old Swifties, Taylor Swift, joining in on the fun. of course, and I got a photo here of little Miss Taylor Swift. Of course, it's towards the end of the show, so sometimes my photos don't turn up. Why that is at the end of the show, I don't know. But if you could see it, you would see little Taylor with her cat. I'm not left to call Restream and find out why in the beginning of the show, all my photos are fine, and then towards the end of the show, they don't show up. So sorry about that. As always, one of those little technical glitches I'm going to have to figure out. So this is what Taylor Swift stated in her comment, which, by the way, has had millions of likes. She is very influential amongst amongst females in this country. And there was a study done one time, a poll that said, if Taylor Swift, endorsed a certain candidate, would you vote just because that's who she endorsed? 35,000 people at that time said, yes, I would vote for anyone she endorsed, no matter who it was. So that's a little bit scary. She says, like many of you, I watched the debate tonight. If you haven't already, now is a great time to do your research on the issues at hand and stances these candidates take on the topics that matter to you the most. As a voter, I make sure to watch and read everything I can about their proposed policies and plans for this country. Recently, I was made aware that AI of me falsely endorsing Donald Trump's presidential run was posted to his site. It really conjured up my fears around AI and the dangers of spreading misinformation. It brought me to the conclusion that I need to be very transparent about my actual plans for this election. As a voter, the simplest way to combat misinformation, there it goes, misinformation, is with truth. I will be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the 2024 presidential election. I'm voting for at Kamala Harris because she fights for the rights and causes I believe need a warrior to champion them. What, murdering babies? Bringing illegals in to kill your cats? Yeah, I don't think so. I think she is a steady-handed, gifted leader, and I believe we can accomplish so much more in this country if we are led by calm and not chaos. I was so disheartened. I was impressed by her selection of running mate Tim Walz, who has been standing up for LGBTQ plus rights, IVF, and a woman's right to her own body for decades. So, in one statement, of course, we learned that Taylor Swift supports abortion. She supports open southern borders. And I think you can guess what else she must all support as far as her statement goes. And which, of course, is all of those super far left liberal policies. But hey, go ahead and keep sending your kids out to idolize her. I don't have a problem with Taylor Swift. I don't have a problem, quite honestly, with anyone who wants to vote for Kamala Harris. It is our ancestors fought for your right just as much as our right. She can vote for whoever she wants to vote. I'm just telling you, a lot of kids are very impressionable, and we talk about schools turning out liberals, and I don't think Taylor Swift asked to be a role model, quite honestly. I don't think that she asked for that to happen, but at the same time, it is what she has become. And man, if I were a parent and I had little girls, they would not be attending a Taylor Swift concert any more than a liberal would want their children attending a Donald Trump rally. So think about that one, something to think about. Speaking of, I'm going to get to the tetanus shot here next. I want to run this past you really quick because I thought this was crazy, some crazy stuff. P. Diddy, remember how his house was raided and it just kind of disappeared from the news? And I remember thinking, like, what is going on with P. Diddy? I read this yesterday, completely slipped by. I haven't heard it on any news. I read the news. I don't watch the news, but I didn't read it anywhere else until late last night. P. Diddy was ordered to pay $100 million. He lost this lawsuit. He's ordered to pay $100 million to Derek Lee Cardello Smith. Now, Derek is a 51-year-old man. He claimed that in 1997, P. Diddy, as we know him, Sean Combs, he drugged and sexually assaulted him. So, according to this lawsuit that P. Diddy lost, he lost this lawsuit. He has to pay this guy $100 million. This guy claims that he drugged him and sexually assaulted him. And yes, I'm shocked by it. I really am. When I started seeing all the videos and different things coming about P. Diddy, I thought, well, I'm not really sure what to think. You hear about this stuff, and sometimes they're just coming after people. But no, no, no. $100 million to this guy. Did P. Diddy really drug him and sexually assault him? I don't know, but he's going to pay $100 million regardless. I guess we've got to listen to the judicial system and assume that it is true. So we only have a few more minutes before we head out. I want to talk about vaccines. Like I said earlier at the very beginning of the show, I'm not COVID vaccinated. And I firmly, and I know many of you are not, I firmly believe that our government, the one world government, the WEF, the WHO, the CDC, name any other organization you want, they want every American vaccinated, every single one of us. Because, and I'm not going to get into the conspiracy now as to why that probably is. They're not under the assumption that, okay, well, we got 80% of Americans vaccinated or 80% of the world. Let's just not worry about the other people. If they get sick, they get sick. That they're on their own. It doesn't work that way here in this situation. It does not work that way. That's what they do with the flu shot, right? When I go to my doctor's office, they say, "Oh, do you want the flu shot?" I say, "No." And they say, "Okay." They go about their business. Not anymore. Well, first of all, they've combined the flu shot and the COVID vaccine. So that doesn't help. You kind of get both in one shot now in a lot of places. However, I was really shocked when a friend of mine messaged me yesterday and said, "You really have to watch this. You really have to see this because this is happening." A tetanus shot, they're going to sneak it in any way they can. Take a look at this quick video. It's just a minute long. And then we'll talk about this for just a moment.
Hi guys, May the 16th, just took a call from a very distressed Irish lady who was very awake from day one and was committed to never having a vaccine. She was in total disagreement with her husband, who was very pro-vax, but they both did their own thing respectfully, and she continued to turn them down. She caught her hand in the door, damaged her finger, went to Frimley Hospital, and was given a tetanus. And she suddenly became very unwell over a course of the following weeks, and has had various ailments. One point she couldn't walk. Anyway, it transpired she got in touch with the hospital and inquired as to what she was given, and they gave her a 3-in-1 vaccine. Instead of a tetanus shot, just a tetanus shot, she was vaccinated against her will. And they said that, well, they've learned lessons now, and they'll implement those lessons in their training moving forward. So this is a warning to anyone who goes to hospital who thinks they're having a tetanus. They're fucking vaccinating people with tetanus shots now. So please don't have any NHS injection. And she begged me to pass that on to you all because her health is ruined because they've vaccinated her without her knowledge. It's disgusting. These people, they're disgusting fucking criminals.
Yep. Think about that. Go out and do your own research. I'm giving you a lead where to go. Go out and do your own research. You don't have to believe what I'm telling you or what this guy's telling you. They want everybody vaccinated, everyone. If you manage to escape it the first time, the second time, the third time, they're going to sneak it in one way or the other. And I think the bigger question is why? Why do they want to make sure that every single person is vaccinated when we know at this point for the majority of people now and even then that COVID is very much like a cold? As a matter of fact, they've told us that. The CDC has even told us that symptoms now are very mild. It has continued to mutate. Symptoms are very mild. Why do they want us to get this quite so bad? I think we all know, and I'm not going to get into the turbo cancers and everything else. And I apologize if anybody's commenting again towards the end of the show yesterday, today. Not sure what's going on, but I have not been able to see your comments since Darren Dye asked where in Georgia. So I am so sorry if anybody's out there commenting. I will have to go back later and look at those comments. So I apologize for that. So think about this. Tetanus shots, look it up, do your due diligence, find out why that's going on. I don't have to preach to you guys about what the COVID vaccine is or why it is what it is or what it does to people and the turbo cancers and the long-term effects, the crystals that end up in people's ear canals or the blood clots. I'll never forget a day when I was on Real Talk and I had unamped in the AM and a woman called in, and I don't know if she's still listening. I don't know if I knew her name then, and I certainly don't know now, but it was the most heartbreaking thing, and I think about it all the time. She called into the show and she said, my son, I think she said he was 26 years old. She said his heart is surrounded with blood clots. Can you imagine, oh my God, what you would think if that happened to your family member? How heartbreaking, how angry you would be. It gets to me, and I think about it a lot, what they've done to us and what they will continue to do to us. That's not in the past, what they will continue to do with us. We have to do what we have and what we can to win this election. I know not everybody can pick up and take it on the road or, pick up and take off work to go work at the polls. You don't have to. If you're so busy, and I get it, where you can't do any of those things, put a sign in your front yard. I think that every single person who is going to vote for Donald Trump, or at least even supports Donald Trump, even if, hopefully you're casting that vote, you need to cast that vote now more than ever. Put a sign out in your front yard, because at some point we can go around and we'll say, okay, look at this neighborhood. There's, 500 signs in this neighborhood. Guess what? We know that this neighborhood would have gone red, but they didn't allow it because they counted dead voters. They counted the homeless and didn't have addresses, people who don't have IDs. And what is it, Wisconsin? I know I have it here somewhere. I don't remember right now. Wisconsin, I think there were 142,000 voters in Wisconsin expected to be able to vote without an ID, because guess what? They're confined to their home, so they can cast this absentee ballot and not even prove who they are. And 142,000 votes, that can actually make a very big difference in one area. But guys, that's it for today. I didn't get around to my replacement theory. I had a couple videos I was going to show you about what's happening with these illegals that come into our country. Replacement theory is a real thing, but we're out of time. I can't believe I covered as much as I did. I didn't think I'd get through it all. And maybe I need to have less topics and talk about those topics a little bit more instead of pushing my time. We'll get to that. There's going to be a lot of changes going on in the show. There will be a show, even though I'm on the road. There will be a show. We're going to continue on. Nothing's going to change. I still have other things going on that are also not going to change. But I want to make sure I throw that out there. Be sure if you're here tomorrow, we're going to talk about replacement theories, lots of other things to cover. And I apologize, I can't see your comments. I hope all of you have a fantastic day. And I will look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning. I am Tabitha with Tabs on Tap. Have a great